happened, maybe that would have happened anyway. But now we know. There's a new enemy.
You're more like us than them. You don't belong with these people.
Hey guys, Kiwi here. In this video, I'll be breaking down and analyzing the character Lydia, who's a whisper that ends up as a prisoner at the Hilltop during the mid-season premiere for Season 9 of The Walking Dead. With that being said, major warning is spoilers for everything in the show up to the mid-season finale for Season 9, Episode 8, and let's jump right into this. So Episode 908 ended off with a whisper ambush cliffhanger as the characters Aaron, Eugene, Daryl, Michonne, Magna, and Yumiko defended themselves against being surrounded by whispers right after Jesus was sadly fatally stabbed and murdered. Although Episode 908 ends off as this big cliffhanger, the mid-season promo trailer for the rest of Season 9 teases the rest of what happens. So first off, we can see our circle of survivors in the graveyard as whispers start sprinting at them with knives again, so I assume that the mid-season premiere will start off with another epic whisper attack. That being said, we know that our characters will make it out of there as we also get clips of Michonne's group returning to the Hilltop, including all of the survivors from the Whisper ambush. We know it's the same group returning not only because of who's there along with the clothes that they're wearing, but also because we can literally see Aaron walking alongside Jesus being brought back over a horse. Rest in peace. It's really depressing to see him like that, but at least it seems like they give him a proper burial at the Hilltop. Now, if you want more of a discussion on the Jesus death, feel free to check out my multiple videos discussing it, as I first give my reaction and opinions of the matter, along with going in depth and behind the scenes with interviews from the actor who plays Jesus and the showrunner about the reasons behind why they came to the mutual decision to kill Jesus off. Anyways, when Michonne's group is shown returning to the Hilltop, they have a prisoner tied up on a horse. I believe that this is Lydia, and she's a whisper. We've been waiting for this to happen for a while now. It's a huge thing in the comics, and it's finally appearing on screen, and I'm very excited for it, although Carl isn't exactly here to experience it all. With that being said, there's a lot to explain, so let's jump right into the comics as we explain what happens in the source material and give predictions as to what will happen throughout the rest of Season 9 on the show. So first off, there's two random patrolmen who go out further than they should, resulting in the entire Rosita Eugene situation that we've recently seen on the show since episode 906, where they're chased by the Whispers. Check out my full Whisper reveal video discussing how Rosita and Eugene got the remixed Ken and Marco story arc, but let's move on. In the comics, someone named Dante goes out in search for Ken with a group of red shirt soldiers, and they all actually end up dying except for him due to the Whispers, and then he ends up getting kidnapped after he realizes that the Whispers wear masks. And then around the same time, but completely unrelated, Jesus goes out with some red shirt soldiers as well to search for a different missing patrolman named Nathaniel, but after a full day of searching, just as they decide to turn around and go home, they get jumped by the Whispers with knives, and almost everyone dies except for Jesus. He fends off against the Whispers, he ends up hearing a friend still alive but getting attacked, and he goes to help him. He manages to kill all the Whispers except one, who surrenders. He pulls off the mask, and it turns out to be a teenage girl, which is just completely shocking. Now in the show, it seems as though they've combined both the Ken rescue mission with Dante, along with the Whisper ambush with Jesus, as it just makes more sense, honestly. Now in the show, Jesus does sadly die, and Maggie is off with Georgie, but in the comics, they're both still there at the Hilltop like they should be, so it's weird talking about this when they're not in the show anymore. But regardless, it seems like they still end up bringing back a Whisper prisoner to the Hilltop. They interview her in the comics once they lock her up in jail. She says her name is Lydia and she's 16 years old, and what she tells them doesn't really make the Whispers seem any less strange than you'd imagine. She says that they clean and wear zombie skin as it makes the dead leave her group alone. They travel with the dead, and they've learned to grow up alongside the dead and become accustomed to it protecting them. And when it comes to the Whispers learning to live together with the dead, they're taught to either learn or die when it comes to the ideals of their group, which is obviously pretty harsh. Now Lydia is 16, the same age as Carl after the 4-year time skip in the comics, as Carl was actually 12 years old during All Out War. That being said, Lydia explains how there aren't any children in the eyes of the Whispers, as the ideals of the Whispers is to believe that acting civilized is just a pointless illusion of safety being brought on by civilization, and that it makes people weak as they give themselves false comfortability. Lydia even says that childhood childhood is a myth, which is just ridiculous. But for more on the ideals of the Whisperers, check out my last video where I discuss the Whispers and explain them in their entirety. So in the comics, Carl was actually being punished for getting in a fight with some bullies just as Jesus came back to the hilltop with the prisoner Lydia. So Carl was actually put in jail at the same time, and he noticed Lydia when he was taken to his own jail cell, and he became instantly curious of her. They started talking through the jail wall, and they became friends. It was a constant debate on whether or not Lydia was manipulating and brainwashing Carl, as she could have messed with his feelings, giving her a leg up on the community if she had negative intentions to infiltrate the survivors from the inside out. That being said, although the debate went on for quite a while, especially since they had Lydia smiling in the darkness once Carl started trusting her, after watching more of them interact together along with seeing what ultimately ends up happening, it turns out that Lydia is actually just a young naive girl who was raised with extremely messed up rules and lessons, which obviously hindered her ability to develop properly as a normal human being. So when Jesus questions Lydia, he ends up getting pulled away to discuss what they know about the Whisperers with Maggie, giving Carl time to talk to Lydia alone. And then the next time Jesus goes to talk to her, she's wearing Carl's hat. Even when Carl gets let out to go back and work with Earl the blacksmith, he still ends up coming back to talk to Lydia in jail. Jesus and Maggie get annoyed by this, telling Carl that they can mess up their chance of getting more information out of her, but he just defends Lydia, telling them that they need to treat her nicely as they're just scaring her. They agree that Lydia should be let out of jail as well to open up more to them, and so when they do eventually let her out, she keeps hanging out with Carl and he teaches her about how people act normally and respectfully. Carl gets her to understand that she is his responsibility and that he's taking a huge risk allowing her to roam freely with him, so she better not mess it up. He lets her know that if she threatens anyone, he won't hesitate to defend himself or the people that he cares about, and he'll kill her if he tries anything, but if she really is telling the truth, she should have nothing to worry about, as he honestly has good intentions. Now, as I said beforehand, initially it was up for debate on whether or not she was even telling the truth to Carl, or if she was just lying to him the whole time, but it turns out that she was being honest and genuine. She just doesn't properly know how to show emotions, as the Whisperers have a wilderness group mentality, like a territorial pack of wolves. They don't believe in emotion, and they look down upon civilized living as they consider it a pointless luxury. Carl respects her in a way that she's never been respected before, and she tells him that she likes his way of life and that she doesn't want to go back to her family. She starts flirting with him as she accepts him for the way that he looks, with his eye being missing and all, something that he's been self-conscious about since it happened years and years ago. Now, Negan originally told him to be more confident in regards to this battle wound, but Lydia takes it a step further by calling his eye socket sexy, literally licking it. This escalates from 0 to 100 as she asks him if he's ever had sex before, followed by her telling him that she can show him. So this is obviously a pretty huge moment for Carl, especially since earlier in the issue we were led to believe that maybe something was going on between him and Sophia, but then things take a twist and Carl ends up having sex with Lydia. And then not soon after, the Whispers arrive at the gates to the hilltop with their leader Alpha, who turns out to be Lydia's mother. Look out for my next video where I break down Alpha and the Whispers arriving at the hilltop, along with the results of that confrontation. And there's also this fucked up thing where the Whispers are strangely okay with rape because they believe in primal instincts and that you need to prove that you can defend yourself, so it's like some sort of fucked up lesson. I'm not sure if they're gonna do that in the show, but I'll cover that more in a separate video when we get around to that. There's just so much to discuss in regards to the Whispers and the rest of Season 9, and so we'll be covering each topic in a separate video, as each situation and confrontation truly does deserve its own conversation and explanation. Anyways, in the show it's become glaringly obvious that Henry is replacing Carl after the 6-year time skip, and I believe that Henry will get the whole Carl-Lydia story arc as well, especially since he's been perfectly set up to be locked up in jail for the next few days, just in time to speak to Lydia for a bit before he gets let out. Now, we've seen theories about Henry being Carl 2.0 ever since actually this time last year, halfway through Season 8, during all of the Carl death rumor leaked spoiler drama before the Carl death episode even aired, and I never really liked liked the sounds of Henry replacing Carl whatsoever. No offense to the actor or anything, I just couldn't believe that they were disrespecting Carl as a character, both on the show and his comic book counterpart, so much that they'd just kill off TV show Carl out of nowhere, and then replace him with some annoying little kid who we don't know or care about. And believe me, I thought that Carl was annoying as hell in the earlier seasons when I first watched the show, but he quickly grew on me. Henry, not so much. Even now that he's grown up with the 6-year time skip, he's a bit better, but it won't be as good as if it was with Carl. I never really liked Henry as a character at all, but as I said, now that he's grown up by 6 years, there is potential for this story to be told satisfyingly, I guess, but it just won't be the same. I've been low-key upset over the comic book Carl story arc not getting the justice that it deserves on the show anymore, but at least we're going to see it come to fruition at all. I'm kinda surprised that they've actually decided to use Henry as a Carl replacement instead of Enid getting to know Lydia instead, as we've known Enid longer. With that being said, look out for a future Season 9 discussion video in regards to the Carl love triangle between Lydia and Sophia in the comics, along with how Henry may get that story remixed into Season 9 as well. Finally, I wanted to quickly bring up how Daryl actually seems to be talking to Lydia while she's in jail. Daryl is original to the show, and so far he's been getting his own original story for Season 9, so how will he get remixed into the Whisper story? A major issue with Daryl's character, along with the TV show original characters in general, is that sometimes after their original intention, they're unable to figure out original source material for the characters afterwards. Daryl had a bunch of character evolution up until Season 4, everything with Merle, and then shortly afterwards, but then after that he's pretty much just been the same. This is due to having new TV show characters on top of all the other characters from the comics, making the show's list of alive survivors much larger than in the comics. Sometimes there's something to remix from the comics into the show, but oftentimes there's not, leaving them to just stand around and do nothing. So far with Season 9, they've done a great job integrating Daryl into the story and showing him by giving his own roles, while at the same time not really intruding on anything else going on. Before the 6-year time skip, during the first 5 episodes, he was the leader to the Sanctuary, something that Dwight did in the comics, and then after the 6-year time skip, Daryl has his own original story living out in the woods, he has a dog, and he's been looking for Rick. So will Daryl create a connection with Lydia in the Whispers? Daryl has been living out on his own for a while, so maybe he'll be able to relate to Lydia in regards to living away from civilization. Now, I'm not too sure what Lydia will try to convince Daryl of, if anything, but he's not one to be easily manipulated, so I don't really think that she'll outsmart him in any sense. But will Daryl end up following Lydia in the Whispers just like Carl did in the comics, or will that still be given to Henry? I'll be mentioning that more in a future video as well, but what do you guys think about Lydia going into the second half of Season 9? What do you think about them capturing a Whisper and bringing her to the hilltop? And how do you think it'll get remixed into Henry and Daryl? There's also a ton more to tell in regards to Lydia's story, but I'll save that for their own videos in the future when it becomes more relevant down the road. Let me know of any opinions, theories, or predictions you have down below, but that's pretty much it for the video, guys. I'd appreciate a like on the video if you've enjoyed anything I've said today, as it really helps me out more than you can imagine. Feel free to subscribe for more Walking Dead content in the near future, and if you'd like to take the extra step in helping support the channel, consider checking out my Patreon as well. Also follow me on Twitter too, link to both of those in the description. I'm fairly active on Twitter even when I'm not posting videos, and I'm always retweeting everything I can involving the Walking Dead universe. But anyways guys, as always, I thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out!